Hello YouTube. In this new Tales of Genetics, I'm going to be recounting the experience I've had with two individuals that I believe represent both extremes of the genetic spectrum, because one of them was incredibly gifted and the other one was incredibly cursed. And therefore, I'm going to bring some balance to the series, because for now, I've only been talking about freaks. But freaks can exist in different kinds, right? There's the good freak, there's a guy that's going to put on a ton of muscle. But there's also the poor lad, the poor soul, that is going to be the exact opposite. Who's going to work out all the time, who's going to just hyper focus on the gym, and who's not going to make much gains. That figure, that entity tends to be a little bit overblown. It doesn't happen very often. Most people who think that they are that are actually just lazy. But here, I'm going to speak about a man who was actually inflicted with a lot of disadvantages and yet still managed to achieve things. And you'll see that on the other side, the guy who had the amazing potential squandered it, as it often happens. So these two guys, just to paint a broad picture, one, the guy who was really gifted, was a black guy, and he trained at the gym, and he trained at the exact same time every day, just like me. So I saw him every single day. And the second guy was a short, white dude who was, I think, something like 5'5", 5'6". He was relatively short. He was really bottom heavy in a sense. His upper body was really small. And he was also a ginger. Doesn't really matter, but it's just for you to be able to actually picture that person in your head. And the other guy, the black guy, was my size. He was 6 feet. Those two guys were in the gym all the time, right? The second guy actually had another membership. He was that serious about the gym that he had a membership close to his job, and during lunchtime, he would go in and do some accessory movements. That's how dedicated he was. The other guy was also dedicated, but in a weird way. And you see that a ton with people. You have sometimes people who work hard, and on paper, they put in a lot of hours, but what they do is such bogus that it doesn't really compute or make a difference in terms of gains. And that guy was the perfect example, because for some reason, he refused to use barbells, he refused to use dumbbells, and the only mean of resistance training he deemed acceptable was cables, meaning that he would only train using cables. And he also had the delightful quirk of doing circuits on the cable machines, meaning that he would claim an entire area of the gym and do just entire circuits. And if you tried to take one of the machines from him, he would get really mad. But he was also not confrontational at all, so he would just stare at you angrily but never do anything about it. The other guy was much more scientific in his approach. He did compound movements, most compound movements. He did dumbbell movements, isolation, etc. So you had the perfect dichotomy of a complete idiot who had no idea what he was doing, who actually maxed out on cable stacks and would do 1-rep maxes. That guy would do, I vividly remember that, standing cable rows for one, meaning that he would pull the entire stack and then slam it down for 1 rep, which does absolutely nothing. It's completely stupid, but that's all he would do. Other guy did everything right. And yet, in terms of physiques, first guy had an amazing physique. I'm talking like a smaller version of Ronnie Coleman. Especially his back was insane. And it was completely disconnected to his routine. It was pure genetics. It was pure just God-given talent. The only thing I could link it to was he was a swimmer before he started doing his random bullshit with cables. So he got some gains from that. But the way he approached training was just wrong. And yet he looked really good. Other guy, on the other hand, had the disadvantage of being born with, I think, a nerve issue. Some of his nerve endings were destroyed, and therefore he had a real tough time building muscle in certain areas. And especially his arms and upper body were deeply affected by that, meaning that he was the type that could barely curl 25 pounds. It was really difficult for him. Benching, I think he was around 165. And we're talking about a guy who had been training for years. He wasn't lazy, he wasn't stupid about his training. He was just screwed. Meaning that his upper body was set on such a low level of potential that it was almost impossible for him to make progress or build muscle. Like, think about the frustration that you have to deal with your lack of progress on curls, on overhead press, when you use the small muscles of the upper body, and multiply that by 10. This guy started stalling on the bench when he approached 120, right? 135 pounds was an accomplishment for that guy. And it showed because, as I said, his physique was really not that great. He had really big legs, he was strong on lower body movements. And even that is, he was strong for his disease and for his actual, his situation. But he was nothing impressive at all. And he was the perfect example of who I would have thought would have become black pilled. Meaning that he had all of the excuses in the world to just say, you know what, screw it. There's no reason for me to do it. I was cursed by God when I was born. Lifting is stupid, let me just quit. And yet he never did that. And not only did he not do that, he never let himself just crack under the pressure. He never let his spirits get down. He was continuously cheery, continuously happy, and just putting in his best efforts. It didn't matter to him that he was born with shit genetics. All that mattered was to get better every single day. And that he did. He never missed a day, he was always present. Flip back to the other guy. Other guy was also in the gym all the time with amazing potential, but guess what? He never progressed. I've seen that guy for something like 2 years. He never progressed. He never actually went anywhere with his potential. Why? Because he was training like a complete idiot. And that attitude of his is the reason why he never went anywhere. And this is sort of the entire core of this video. Yeah, you can be born with amazing genetics, you can be a freak, but if you don't have what it takes to actually put that into action, it's all for nothing. And in reality, this also means that it is the most important thing. Not the genetics, not the cards you were gifted at birth, but the way you play with them. The way your spirit is actually going to carry you through that game. Are you going to just give up because the cards are not good, or are you going to keep playing? If you keep playing, you could be beating guys with better hands. Because the thing with that first guy was that, as I said, he was really stupid. And therefore, what happened with him is that he just felt and fell for the idea that if he just did 1 rep max on cable stacks, he would get bigger with time. But the only thing that happened is he got fatter and fatter and fatter. And eventually he gave up. Meaning that all of that potential was now buried through a thick layer of fat. And guess what? Other guy was much better. He actually looked much better. And the last time I saw the other guy, he had made some good progress. It took him years, but he was actually starting to look a little bit jacked in the upper body. Why? Because he never gave up. Because he never felt the need to complain about his genetics, and he therefore was able to create and craft an history and a journey for himself that made him proud. Meanwhile, other guy I remember would meet me in the locker room, which was creepy enough, and ask me how I managed to get my body like this. He wouldn't listen to my answers. Then he would ask me if it's normal to have your body hurt at night before going to bed. Apparently, he had muscle cramps so bad he couldn't fall asleep. And at this point, you just have to question yourself, like, if my body is responding this way, maybe it's because my training is wrong. Maybe it's because showing up to the gym every single day and maxing out on the cable stack is just stupid. But he never did. He never actually thought about that. And you know what? I blame his genetics for that. I think that he was so gifted that he ended up thinking it was because of his hard work, and therefore he never actually felt the need to review his methodologies, and therefore he never went anywhere. And I can guarantee you also that that guy, when he got fat and when he just fell off the wagon, blamed his genetics, even though he had amazing potential. And I can tell you, and that's the funniest thing, that if you could switch their brains, if you could swap their brains, that guy could have become something in the bodybuilding world. That black dude with the brain of the ginger would have made amazing things. But now try to imagine what would have happened to the other guy who was not gifted if he had had the same spirit as the first guy. He would be black belt. He would have given up. His life would have amounted to nothing. Why? Because of the attitude switch. And I can also tell you that first guy was hated in the gym. No one liked him because he was a prick. Second guy was loved by everyone. So for the people who still think, oh, genetics can make you a Chad and you can be loved by everyone, no, nonsense. The way you behave is going to matter a lot. The halo effect does, to a certain degree, have an impact. But besides that, you cannot take away your own responsibility in this. If people don't like you, it's because of you. If they do like you, it's also because of you. And that is going to be the end of the stars of genetics. In life, you cannot choose to be the first guy. You cannot choose to be genetically gifted, but you can choose not to behave like him. And I'm going to leave you with that. Thanks for watching and have a good day.